So I am very glad to Nicola because I never thought very much to my practice. I never cared to publish my work because I always considered the practice a kind of, I would say, verification of the theory. Just this was not a so noble, we can say, activity. It was a secondary aspect of my research, and it was a mistake because for an architect, I realized the practice, the design, is part of the theory. And the true methods, the true theory, they come from practice. Saverio Muratori, which produced maybe the most sophisticated and articulated theory in architecture, said clearly that all the research they started for him from practice. And also if we think to the old theoretician, Palladio and so on, everyone which has written a true, useful theory for design started from practice. So for this I am very glad to Nicola. So this book deals with an important aspect for us as designer and scholar of urban morphology, which is the evidence-based design. So what is evidence-based design? Design based on evidence that for architecture exists. There are many evidences. Construction is an evident aspect of our profession. We can investigate objectively on construction and function. Function is another thing evident we can use, and economy, the cost of the construction. All the components of this component of the architecture, they are evident. But if we care all these evident aspects of the architecture, we don't produce architecture. We produce building. Architecture is something different. What is different between building and architecture? Art. As architect, we have to recognize that architecture is not only building, it's building in a very specific way, in an artistic way. And this makes everything very, very complicated. So the problem became, is possible today produce an architectural evident art, evidence-based architectural art? So, in my opinion, the answer to the question is no. If we think to the contemporary condition, what is art in architecture today? Mainly is communication, is a spectacle, is something which is an individual feeling about the topic or the design. So we produce something that, in my opinion, is late romantic art. It's not contemporary art, really. It's something which is, in my opinion, outdated. So it's different if we can say overturn the paradigm and we say that art is not the origin of architecture, it's the conclusion of the architecture. Is an aesthetic synthesis of a process, and is the method which I try to use, and I try to demonstrate through the book and through the interview of Nicola. These allow us, in my opinion, to produce not individualistic art, but a civic art, an art which we can demonstrate, which we can communicate, which is useful, which everybody can understand. So the art for architecture is the final synthesis of a process. This means that we have to investigate the process with the tool of urban morphology. We follow the process, and our design is the last phase of the process. Of course, a phase in which we understand the reality, the build reality, with our tool. From a personal point of view, we can't avoid this. If I study something from my point of view, I have studied for all my life Roman palazzos and Roman monuments. Of course, I have an interpretation, a reading of the city, of the architecture, which is mine. So we can't avoid that anything we produce as architect is individual. But it's something which we can demonstrate, we can communicate, and can be understood as a civic act. Creation in any might, in any religion, starts with the matter. Matter is something which has no quality, and we as architects or gods, we find a quality in the matter. The creation is to recognize that the water is liquid, that the fire is hot, and things like that. The quality of the matter is the creation. So I refer to St. Thomas because he has spoken about this transformation of the matter in material in the most clear way. He was a medieval theologist and philosopher who has got the heritage of Plato and Socrates and Aristotle, and he spoke about the principle of individuation. Everything is confused, is a magma, and became individual when we recognize some quality inside the matter. So it's not a question of transformation, it's just a question of knowledge and conscience. And we transform the matter in material, you see here, and the material is, for this reason, materia signata is matter marked by our knowledge, by our conscience. And as I go very quickly, we transform the material in elements, structure, system, and at the end, organism. And the organism has gotten its own transformation as a phase of formation, transformation, consumption, and at the end, it became ruins, which is a phase of the transformation very important. We rarely study ruins, but the ruins tell us a lot. And you see that someone of this stage, it starts again a new process. We can consider the organism as the matter of the fabric, a matter in which we as architects recognize some quality, some opportunity to aggregate the different built organisms, to form a new entity, which is not just a scale, it's a new entity. And the same for the ruins. We consider sometimes the ruins as the end of the architecture, but really they are substrata. It's something on which we can found new architecture. I speak as Italian and Roman, so I know that the ruin, they are the base of not new transformation. But this kind of substrata could be also immaterial. It's something that we have as heritage from all the phases which has passed through the city. So to be brief, my experience, I think that there are two main factors which influence our decision about the form: the construction and the gravity, which give an order to the construction. They give a hierarchy to the different parts. And the light. Light is fundamental because it's the tool through which we recognize, we have the perception of the form. And see here, for example, this rock is just a rock, but as architect, we can say that it's not just matter, it's a material, because we recognize the diaclasis in the different parts, the fracture, and we can obtain from these some tiles to build, some blocks to build. So The first experiment, some experiment I made on these were artistic. This is a sculpture for an exhibition which was called Creative Fragments, and it's just 3 pieces of tufa stone obtained by an Etruscan quarry. They are architectural sites, 2 meters and 40, 2 meters and 50. And the operation was just to take from the quarry, to bring to the exhibition place, and to make, as you see, some moldering here, just this, which are fundamental. Because through this operation, you transform a fragment in an architecture, because it gives a hierarchy, a direction, transforming some part which are the basic part of any architecture, not only classic, the differences between the base, which we obtain, and elevation. You see here, base and elevation is the fundament of any architecture in any part of the world, and after the unification and conclusion. And after, very quickly, some slide about another experiment about the light. This was an extreme experiment. Was an exhibition, how you say, arrangement for a huge exhibition in the exhibition palace in Rome, and was an exhibition about pots, boats by famous designer Gallet, Wright, Frank Lloyd Wright, Geoponti, and so on. So my idea was to don't use but the light. So the image resulting should be just the light. So using polycarbonate, and the result is this is a picture from the exhibition. There was nothing, the dark and the light of the intersection between the polycarbonate with, for diffraction, give this impression of line of light. Of course, now it would be impossible to have something like that for safety reasons, but it was completely dark, and all the bowl, all the product of the artistic design were floating in the space. But my main focus, as Nicola Scardigno told before, was on massive load-bearing and closing space material, which is Mediterranean material, which differentiates from Gothic material, and what derived from Gothic, which is contemporary many contemporary architecture. The light architecture, which we say international architecture, is really derived from an idea of structure, load-bearing but not closing space, the light architecture. This one is an architecture which is based on massive material, on shadow, light, and things like that. So quickly, this was a very first experiment where I was still a student last year when I designed this housing. There were row housing in Rome, and this is a part of the building. And this is a very much more mature experiment. Is the wall in the cemetery of Terni, and you see that I has employed in a contemporary way the partition of the classical, I say, layer of architecture, which belong to any culture, the palazzo, for example, but also the classic order. So a base, a floor line, and all this, which is elevation, which a window sill line which sign the end of the wall and the starting of another construction. So the opening they are obtained by void space between this other construction, the unification, and after the conclusion here, which is the roof. This is the second phase of construction. The material was changed, was another kind of stone, much more pale, so the idea is of a more abstract construction. And all the symmetry was based on idea of city. Like in a city, all the chapel were aligned along a road with special building, like in a city. And the special building always derive, in our way of seeing architecture, a specialization of the house. So also here, this small chapel here is derived by melting of two houses, 1 and 2. And all the light in the cemetery is very pale, is a very, I say, dark, we can say, road, the inner one. But here should be some light going inside and giving a different character to the chapel. So I prepared this format for the glasses. I collected sunglasses from Florence, from different places, and after I made this cast concrete horizontally to have an idea of the wall like a cloud, not smooth, in such a way to have, this is the result, you see it's very cloudy, the concrete, in such a way to have here smooth concrete, here cloudy, you can say concrete, and this blade of shadow coming from the roof. And all the symmetry is based on this dialectic between heavy, the wall, and the light, which is also the metal structure. Terni, the place in which the symmetry was built, is a place of cast iron industry. So this is the cast iron roof, and also other part of the symmetry. This, for example, is a tower built in steel, and this is the sheet of steel which are used for the floor. This is the layout of the cemetery. We have built now this part, and we are going now to build the crates, which are a symbol, a feminine symbol, is a Latin idea of the dead, not Gothic. The dead as regeneration. So these are the image of something uterine, which generate in the, like in all Latin literature. Going very fast. This is the last part of the construction, the more recent part of the construction, because the construction will go on for after 50 years probably. It started 50 years ago and will go on for other 50 years. This is the last part, which is quite, the construction is quite concluded. So, this is another idea. As I told you, the built organism is the new matter of the fabric. So, the fabric also is a circular process in which we we study the built reality, we study as a process, we read the process. From the process we derive an abstraction. Any morphologist say this, to recognize the general in the particular. Whiten, to this, consent, muratori, to see what is general in the particular. And from the general we derive an abstraction, few rule, which can in turn generate an infinite possibility of generating new form. So, quickly, some example of this process. This is, for example, a competition for Piazza Mastai. This is the forming process. Here, for who know rooms, they has built Viale Trastevere, and this is the forming process from the rural use of the land to a transformation in the 19th century with the fountain, and this is the last part, which is the design proposal. So following the process, we arrive to a contemporary interpretation. This is the square built, the transformation of the square like it is nowadays. This is another experiment we made very recently with Francesca and Matteo Oliva. It is two small settlements near Bergamo, North Italy, which are part of the same administration, but they are separated by a motorway. So the competition has to form an identity. So the true identity for us was the substrata, which was a Roman centuriatio, which were organized here. You can see we have reconstructed the centuriatio. And on this we have based a design, this is the actual face, which in some way continue the alignment as a memory and identity of the place. It's not just the settlement, it's the substrata, and so on. So this is the design we have made. We have made inside the Kaebup research. Ilaria presented this morning some of this drawing. This is another one. Any project we follow this process, and it's very useful. It's been very useful for me to collect all this project, all this design, because I understood that there is something which derives from the practice, something which is theoretical and is derived from the practice. And this is the competition for Piazza San Cosimato. So for this one I want to use some minutes more, because my opinion is very clear. Is the competition for Carezzano. It's very simple, in my opinion, and very clear as method, and maybe it's useful to understand what I mean when I say the method of studying the process. The place is this. You see, it's very easy to understand which was the original settlement, which is this one. This road ancient, which avoided the center. The competition was about this part of the fabric, which was of middle age origin. So the first thing we did is to search for cadastral map, which was not provided by the competition, because they expected something completely new, which went it abruptly inside the old tissue and regenerate as a miracle everything. So we collected all the cadastral map and discovered that was very clear the origin of the process. There were 3 courtyard houses, you see. This is the origin of the courtyard house, the elementary courtyard house. After this is the second phase, in which was the first infilling. Also this is very clear. you can't demonstrate with documents, but with morphological and typological tools, you can understand easily that this is the other phase. Another phase is the, you say, fusing, melting of the different parts. And after, the last part is the transformation of this house in a special building, like a kind of palazzo, in which all the external roads, they are overturned inside, resolved inside, and form a kind of small palazzo, like a small city which is revolved inside. So the first one is practically sure, it's like that. The second one is true. The third one is true at the same. The fourth one never existed, but is the design. It's the way in which, in our opinion, the built reality should transform, knowing that this is not the only possibilities. We have chosen this because always we have studied palazzos, so we think that the specialization of the houses should be the melting and transformation in a palazzo, but this is the logical result, demonstrable, which could be shared with people, could be demonstrated. It's not an individualistic interpretation of the topic, and this completely modern, because we didn't use for the new part any imitation of the past. New technology, energy saving devices, everything is completely new. But we preserved as much as we could all the existing part of the building, because it's huge wall. It's not possible now, economically, it's not convenient to build something like that, and it's very, very good for energy saving, for the duration of the building, and so on. So I go on very quickly because I suspect that my time is going to. So the same for the territory. This is, for example, a competition for Mendoza in Argentina. We follow the process. This is the first Spanish settlement, planned settlement, the expansion, the new planned settlement, and here, this is the object of the competition. There was a railway park, abandoned, was a Trans-Andean, was a railway which crossed the mountains, enormous mountains going to the Chile. So this railway was abandoned, the park was abandoned, so the idea was to transform all the abandoned railway station, which is an enormous, you see here, area, in an area which is not separate but connected with the rest of the city, in the conviction that the city is an organism. So any part should work with the other, should be in relation with the other. And to conclude, just to say that the morphological analysis and the following of the process is not a machine to produce design. You can also be against the process sometimes. Not everything is made by history is good. We don't accept anything which happened. Otherwise also the smoke was produced by the history, but we don't accept it. If there is something which we can refuse and we can check. So to conclude, I would like to present this example. Is the area here of the Expo in Milan, which was completely isolated. Is really an unlucky place. Probably didn't fit with the goal of a large exhibition for which the main goal should be not the exhibition by itself, but also what will follow to the exhibition. So they didn't thought to what would be happen after the exhibition, and they founded all these places which is owned by the administration here, you see, which is separate by railway, motorway, anything, and is completely isolated. So we made the study of the Roman Centuriatio, thinking that we could follow the substrata, but it was impossible. We discovered that also at the Roman time, this part, which is called plantanedo, swamp, something which was not useful for dwelling, for settlement. And it's so true that also the alignment of the Centuriatio, you see, is changed from this direction, is rotate to this direction. So the idea, we convinced, was not possible to follow the process. So we follow the process, make some knotting in some part of the tissue, here and here, but after to provide new nodes at territorial scale, here and here, the place in which there is an intersection of the fabric and the fabric specialized, but also something which connects for 2.5 kilometers the new pole, and which is completely new and overlap the place of the exhibition, and is something which is in the tradition of the huge linear city, the idea of the big building which overlap the territory